Hi, so with the Warcraft movie just under 2 weeks away for me, I wanted to look at the characters in the movie and see how they're likely to fare compared to the official Warcraft lore. Now I did a video a long time ago on some of the locations that I thought would be featured that are also in game, based on the first proper trailer, but I wasn't worrying too much about the characters and in fact freely interchanged names. I got it completely wrong, hadn't learnt the actors then. Now we've seen many more trailers and clips and I think I can piece together a little of what may happen. So why not just do this in 2 weeks when I don't have to guess, I hear you ask. Well, it's fun to speculate, and I've now got limited time to do that. Now in this video I am going to focus on the heroes of the Alliance, and I'll tackle heroes of the Horde in the next video. So if you feel I'm missing anything out, it might just be that I feel it's got more to do with Horde heroes, but if I miss it out even after the next video, feel free to comment. So the main heroes, as far as can be ascertained in the movie, on the Alliance side, are Anduin Lothar, Lane Rin, Garona Half-Orcan, Khadgar and Medivh, although there are some other notable characters as well. In the official lore, Anduin, Lane and Medivh were all childhood friends, whilst Adamant Rin, Lane's father, sat upon the throne of Stormwind, and Aegwynn, Medivh's mother, was the guardian of Tirisfal. Now we know that the film is likely to tackle the issue of guardians because a clip has been released where Khadgar repeatedly addresses Medivh as Guardian. So what is the Guardian of Tirisfal? Well, they're a line of extremely powerful heroes tasked with defending Azeroth against the return of the Burning Legion after the War of the Ancients. However, Aegon was corrupted by the spirit of Sargeras, produced a son with the great mage Nila Saran, who you can see in Karazhan. Medivh showed no sign of this corruption as he grew up, however, developed it later. Now, as I've already said, there is, in theory, a lot of background story leading up to the Orc invasion of Azeroth, which could take, frankly, 2 films in itself. So an awful lot is going to have to be left out, but there will have to be some device to explain the motivation of Medivh to betray his people and open up the Dark Portal, in secret, from the Azeroth side. Now, at the time of the Warcraft movie, it looks from one clip like Lane Rin is just taking his place on the throne. In the official lore, Adamant is still king when the Orcs invade. In fact, the movie appears to be telling the story of both wars of Orcs versus humans, which actually took place over quite a lot of years, a good 2 decades or more in fact. Of course, this will be heavily contracted for the purposes of the movie, and it's not yet clear where the movie will end. Now, Garona Half-Orcan was the creation of Gul'dan, the Orc warlock, who is the main villain of the piece. He bred a male orc with a female Draenei and then magically aged her to adulthood. And in fact, this female Draenei, bit of a tie-in with Wad here, was the sister of Murad. So Garona is Murad's niece. So he magically aged her to adulthood. Not the last time in this story that someone will be magically aged. She was allowed to believe she was half orc and half human. So in the official lore, that's what she was considered for quite some time. And it's her human features that mean the Orcs never really accept her. She leads a hard life with the Horde, living as an outcast really, but eventually becomes an emissary between the humans and the Orcs after the invasion. Now we know from the movie clips that Garona is taken prisoner by Stormwind, but becomes friendly with their leaders. In the official lore, she is based in Karazhan, Medivh's wizard tower, for much of the time, and actually forms a romance with Medivh where she gets pregnant by him, as well as getting very friendly after an altercation with a demon with Khadgar, who is Medivh's apprentice. The 2 of them learn about Medivh's betrayal. Now there seems to be a little bit of confusion about this, certainly in my mind, because there's 2 ways that Medivh's betrayal is sort of revealed. One is by Khadgar and Garona sort of digging around in Karazhan. The other is Aegwynn revealing Medivh's treachery to King Lane. And there's a character in the trailers that I think is Aegwynn, Medivh's mother. So I'm not quite sure which version, or if indeed if perhaps they're going to go with both versions, is going to happen in the film. I strongly suspect Aegwynn will be used to circumvent a lot of the story, in fact, because it'd be quite useful to do that, I think. Now, during the later battle, which we'll get onto in a bit, with Khadgar and Lothar, Garona receives a vision of her assassinating King Lane, which distresses her a great deal. Now, during the Siege of Stormwind, Gul'dan exercises his mental control over Garona, who indeed then kills Lane in front of his son, Varian, who, if you're playing while Warlords of Draenor is current, is the current King of Stormwind. And for the rest of his life, he's never able to understand why Garona was crying while she was carrying out this grisly task. But of course, it's because she's perfectly aware of what she's doing, even though she's got no control over it, and she was very fond of King Lane. At this time, it's important to note, or maybe it's not important to note, but it's the case anyway, that she's still pregnant with Medivh's child. Now, after the discovery of Medivh's treachery, Khadgar tells Anduin Lothar and King Lane. They don't initially believe him, but Lothar eventually goes to Karazhan with Khadgar and Garona to confront the Guardian. This is the clip I think we see in the first trailer with the Griffins going to Karazhan. During the fight, Khadgar stabs Medivh in the heart and Lothar chops his head off with his greatsword. For some reason, this confrontation magically ages Khadgar into an old man with a huge beard. Something that seems to have disappeared in WoD, leaving the herb Khadgar's whiskers sounding a bit silly now. The Guardian's mutilation appears to be little more than a flesh wound, however, as a reformed Medivh later appears in the Warcraft III game. The game note, not the film. It's believed that the greatsword that Lothar used to carry out this beheading is, or believed by some, to be none other than a Scandi, Greatsword of the Brotherhood, a very desirable two-hander during vanilla that dropped from Nefarian in Blackwing Lair. Having the initials AL, perhaps standing for Anduin Lothar, only serves to reinforce this view. It is, however, by no means certain. There are other things that point to it not being the case. Anduin Lothar, after whom the current Prince of Stormwind, again if you're watching this video before Legion comes out, is named, is basically the Lancelot of this story. He's a great warrior and a great knight in the official lore. The Orcs were initially beaten back very badly by the humans when the invasion first happened. As I say, the wars took place over a good couple of decades. But after a while they learned, and then they started to have victories themselves. The Horde took out Westfall, Elwyn, and finally Stormwind itself. This is the point at which the original Warcraft game ends, with victory for the Horde being the official line. Of course, you could play as both humans and Orcs, and obviously whichever one you took, that faction would be victorious at the end. But for the purposes of the official lore, it's considered that the Horde did defeat Stormwind, and that's where we are, and that's where the first game ends. And then we move into Warcraft II, and I think the film still carries on into Warcraft II. Now, in the official lore, Lothar flees with what remains of his people to Lordaeron to appeal to the ill-fated King Terenas. This features in the Warcraft II game, as I say, and it's the point at which the alliance as we know it now really forms, in my personal opinion. The various human kingdoms agree to band together to fight the Horde, but they don't really trust each other to take the lead, so they appoint Lothar as general, as he's considered to be neutral, given that the kingdom he represents just got Rothel-stomped. He appoints the paladin Turalyon as his second in command. However, the humans are not alone in the fight. The dwarves, the elves, and another race that shall not be named, and will not be in the film anyway, also fight alongside them. The Alliance of Lordaeron. Now, there's no mention, as far as I can tell, of Turalyon in the cast list, so I don't believe he will feature, or at least not prominently. I also don't believe that they will have the flight to Lordaeron, given that it has been mentioned that there isn't that much time in the film spent fighting between humans and orcs. There are plenty of battle scenes, but not actually a great deal between the humans and orcs. So I think the Siege of Stormwind will actually be the great battle at the end of the film, and will probably, although be largely destroyed, still nonetheless technically saved in the end. Now this leaves Anduin Lothar as really the last loose end in the official lore. After years of victories and defeats for both sides in the war, Lothar faces off against Orgrim Doomhammer in single combat. Now I'm going to cover the circumstances of this in more detail in the Heroes of the Horde. However, Orgrim first of all smashes Lothar's sword and then his skull with the Doomhammer at the foot of Blackrock Mountain. The Orcs think that this will demoralise the Alliance army and gives the Orc victory. However, in the official lore, the exact opposite is true. Turalyon takes command, rallies his forces to victory over the Orcs in the Burning Steppes. The surviving Orcs are taken prisoner and held in internment camps to the north, which, if done in the movie, will lead nicely into the sequel featuring the rise of Thrall, perhaps. Little baby Thrall features in the trailers. Of course, they're bound to be thinking that way for future sequels. Now, as Turalyon doesn't feature significantly in the film at least, I'm not sure exactly how this will play out. I still think it's likely that Lothar will fall to Doomhammer because there's no reason to change that. Perhaps Khadgar will be the one to assume command and lead the Alliance to victory, who knows. I have some doubts. One slight concern I have, I'm not sure how strong I want to put it, is we've seen in quite a lot of the recent clips, Khadgar appears to be a bit of a comic relief character. So I'm not really sure, in this film at least, he is treated as a serious enough character to suddenly raise the stakes and win final victory. So who knows how they're going to deal with this one. Now at this point, Medivh is taking an aspirin after having his heart stabbed and his head cut off. So he's out of action for a while. I'm not sure what will happen to Garona in the film, but I don't think they'll kill her as there's no need and she's still alive in the official lore today. She'll probably flee and nothing more will be seen in the film after she assassinates Lane. In the original lore, she removes Lane's heart and takes it to Gul'dan's Shadow Council, but I'm not sure that will feature in the film. It seems like a bit of a side story that would just confuse matters for the average cinema goer. Lane is dead, of course, with a dagger in his back, though from the trailer it doesn't look like this takes place in Stormwind Keep, so that looks like a little bit of a change in the story. Khadgar, we know, is still alive in the current lore as one of the most powerful wizards that's ever lived, has a massive part to play in the destruction of the Dark Portal, but I don't think we'll get around to that in the film. He may just knock it out, which also happens in the official lore before he manages to close it from the other side. But yeah, I think they'll just knock it out for the film temporarily. Apart from anything else, one of the artifacts Khadgar uses for the spell to disable it from the other side is the Skull of Gul'dan. Now that means Gul'dan has to, one, abandon the Horde and bugger off to the Broken Isles to get himself killed, and then Khadgar somehow has to then get his skull. Lothar will be dead at the foot of Blackrock Mountain, but not to worry, he gets a nice statue erected near the sites, which, after many years, the Orcs that are still there don't seem to have been upset enough to destroy. So, hopefully, this was a nice little aperitif for the Warcraft movie, brings you a little bit up to date with the lore for those who might not have known about it, and gives some food for thought as to how they may get around these things without changing too much of the lore in the film. There are other things to cover as well, as I said, but I think they relate more to Horde characters, and I'm going to cover in a video next week, the week before I go and see it. So if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. You might also want to check out my other videos by clicking a link on the next slide. By all means, share with other people you think might be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later.